Hey, this is Ina, in with you in the fight back. And today I want to introduce something on the Spanish Civil War, and that's a little historiography on the subject. Now, the basic story of the Spanish Civil War is the Second Republic was established in Spain in 1931. There's a lot of instability there. There's a lot of unresolved economic and social problems. There's a really powerful Catholic Church. There's a need for land reform. Labor's treated like crap. We have a very powerful anarchist movement, a real radicalization of the workers and peasants. But around the same time, we not only have the Great Depression, we have the rise of fascism. And in 1936, after a popular front is elected of the left-leaning parties, but at the same time there's also a growing radicalization, the military rises up and a civil war begins. Now, the Spanish Civil War invoked great passions because not only were Germany and Italy backing the fascists, the Soviet Union was backing the loyalists, the Popular Front. And volunteers from 50-odd countries came to fight in Spain in the international brigades. But there's still a lot of contention over it. And that deals a lot with the behavior of the Spanish Communist Party, which the way they treated some of their opponents was not the best. Now there are different schools of thought on this, and we'll get to it in a moment. There's also the fact that there was a Marxist rival to the Spanish Communist Party known as the POUM, the Workers' Party of Marxist Unity, which was a quasi-Trotskyist, not completely, party. And the POUM was popularized by George Orwell in The Homage to Catalonia, which you can see my review of, and there's a movie dealing with the POUM called Land and Freedom, directed by Ken Loach. But anyway, what I'd like to go down with you today is a paper I wrote, which you can find in the description of this video, and deals with the historiography. Because the Spanish Civil War is so politicized, I feel like any political person can find their point of view represented in some way in the war. That I wanted to find out how do historians come down? What are the schools of thought on this subject? So this was a graduate school paper. And like I can't really do the whole war, and there's no way I can actually look at every single history book. So I did a broad canvas, and I limited myself. How do historians look at the Spanish Communist Party and the POUM? And I came up with 4 schools of thought. That there are four ways of looking at these parties. There's a conservative way, a liberal way, a communist way, and a radical way. I'm going to go into some detail. Now, we have the conservative view, and they look at the Communist Party of Spain as a revolutionary party. This party wants socialism, it wants communism, it's seeking a Soviet style, or depending on the writer, a Stalinist regime in Spain. And the POUM is generally seen as little more than a pale version of the Communist Party in this regard. I'll go into much more detail in the paper itself, but that's the broad outline. Now, I should also add, the conservative school is the only school that views the Communist Party as revolutionary. The liberal school is the next one, and they believe that the Communist Party of Spain moderated its program, moderated its ultimate ends of socialism and communism by signing the Popular Front Pact, which is kind of a mildly reforming coalition. And the liberals believe the Communist Party had the best strategy needed to win the war, and that the POUM were generally a bunch of fanatics who would have lost the war. I'm kind of simplifying it here, but you can read more detail in the link below. And that the Communist Party is described as regrettably having to crush the POUM to establish a working state and army to win the war. Now, the third school of thought is communist. And they believe that the Communist Party were the best defenders of the Republic. And these ones believe that the POUM, and to some extent the anarchists, are either inefficient fighters in the war against Franco, or even traitors during the war. And the reason I call them communist school is because the authors tend to be Communist Party members, and they're often they can be, not always, quite dogmatic defenders of the Communist Party of Spain. The final school of thought I call radical, and it tends to be either Trotskyist or anarchist. And members of this school believe that the POUM and the anarchists were suppressed by the Communist Party. But they view the Communist Party as counter-revolutionary. And they say it's Stalinist, it's willing to make deals with the capitalist powers, or it's willing to put on a good face for them at the expense of social revolution in Spain. The POUM is generally viewed as a revolutionary group that made mistakes, and I should add, some very considerable, that was unable to carry the revolution through to the end. Now, there's some non-communists and non-anarchists and non-Trotskyists who fall into the radical school. But within each of these schools, there's, of course, debates among the various members. There's, of course, debates between the schools. And for me, there's the Spanish Civil War doesn't just excite us because it's almost a clear-cut battle between good and evil, fascism and anti-fascism. But there were revolutionary possibilities. This was probably the first, in a sense, at least in Europe, the first large-scale revolutionary attempt since 1917. And those revolutionary possibilities continue to excite us today. Anarchists look to the Spanish Civil War. Trotskyists, communists, we all look to it. And I tend to fall with the radical school, and I probably would rewrite this paper a little today, but this is a basic outline of some of the schools of thought that were brought up by the war, and I look at the POUM as like a revolutionary alternative that never got a chance to flourish, never really got a chance, and it was just brutally put down. But this is just a layout of you for this paper. So this is Ina until next time.